Oh, hi everyone. What a nightmare this has been. Stupid, simple little kit, and it sapped me dry. It really tested my interest in the hobby. So why the Belvedere? Well, I've had this in the stash for some time. I don't know why I've got it because it doesn't interest me in the slightest. But it's been there for some time, like most of the stuff I've got. But I think it's cost quite a few people who knew I had it and they were interested in seeing me build it. And the other thing, which made me pick this, is that I've been wanting to get into the 3D printing side for a while. And like most people, I just put it off. I can't be bothered. It's more effort than it's worth, I'll let somebody else do it and print it out. So I thought I'd combine the two because I knew there were areas of the kit that needed attention. In fact, the whole kit needs attention, never mind certain areas. Uh, Leaving aside that horrible split canopy. Never mind that it's split, but it's all the wrong shape as well. Horrendous stuff. So, picked up the next build, and the next thing I had to do was to hunt down some software. So, like everybody else does, went on YouTube, watched a lot of people with a lot of knowledge, took a lot of stuff, and in the end, I really didn't get a definitive answer. There were various opinions. Someone did say, which I think summed up the whole thing, is that what one software gives you with one hand, it takes in the other. And that is so true. So I narrowed it down to Onshape, which is a matter of just creating an account at the time of recording. That's the way it was. And Plasticity, which comes with a 30-day free trial. Once again, at the time of recording, that's what it was. So I got that and got into that first because I had 30 days to see whether I liked it or not. If not, then I would go on to the Onshape. So I spent 2 or 3 hours on an evening fanning about, messing around, watching loads of tutorials on YouTube. I've put in the description some of the ones that I liked personally. There are loads out there, so it's horses for courses. And I found that I liked it. There's a creative bent to it, for want of a better phrase. It seems a bit more freer rather than the engineering-based ones. So for me personally, I liked it. And in the end, I ended up buying a license, which at the time was reasonable. Now, as I just said, the software has its plus points, but it also has its minus points in the fact that when you create anything, if there's any slight changes when you get the hard copies in your hand, sometimes it's too late. Things are set in concrete. Now, there are workarounds, but I ended up creating stages 1, 2, and 3 of the various processes of creating the CAD model. So if there are any changes, I could go back to that stage or that point. So there's no history in this software where you can go back and quickly amend it. So even tiny amendments can be quite a nightmare. And it's a shame, really. If it wasn't for that, this will be a great bit of software. And it's always been the case that when you get, as I said, the hard copy in your hand, you're going to see imperfections and things you want to change, even if they're just slight. And you've got to remember, I was creating these CAD models without actually seeing the hard copy until it was sent to me. And then the ones that I've used on this build are what I will call a Mark II version. So the Mark ones that I got sent needed amendments. So I had to send the files out again. And I also have to give a big shout out to Matt Ball, who printed these parts out for me. I sent him the files and he printed them out. It was great. Fast turnaround, helped me out so much. It saved me the cost of the 3D printer and the resin, plus the time and the effort to set all that up and get used to it. So all I had to do was concentrate on the software side. But now I know I can use it. Now I know that the actual end product's okay. I need to put my hand in my pocket and buy an actual 3D printer. Now in hindsight, I would have liked to create a lot more parts. Like I created the rotor hubs, but it would have been beneficial to create the rotor blades as well. Been far easier rather than try to design something around the kit parts. But the whole point of this process was just to find out whether I could use the software and where the end product was usable. The other thing with this build is it's strange. What the areas that I thought I would struggle with, I had no issues whatsoever. It just seemed to work. And the areas I shouldn't have had problems with, I struggled for whatever reasons. The Vac-form canopy, what a nightmare. It got to the point where I thought, I just wish I'd have kept the kit's parts now. That's how bad it got. But that by the by, now I know I can use the software and the end product's workable. It opens up a world, another plane, another dimension. It's just up to me now whether I do that. I can create my own subject, any scale I want from scratch. It's just a matter of putting the time and effort into creating the parts in the software. I also want to say that this build is horrendous. The end product is terrible. There's so much more I should have done to the Belvedere, but I didn't. I lost interest halfway through the project, and it shows, I'm afraid. Apologies. Which is a shame, really, because the effort put in, it's just, it has sapped me of any interest in this hobby. It really has. That's how bad it's been. So, enough of this waffle. Let's get on and see this build and watch this terrible build. It's awful. Let's see what we've got. Once again with these kits, we have some nice raised, refined surface detail, which is right for this bird. But it's a real pity it's all going to be sanded off because of the poor fit of the parts, which is a shame. The detail on the figures isn't bad, it's just that pose that lets them down. The rotor head, not bad for its day. These early engine covers or lower covers won't be needed. The blades once again have some nice surface detail, but because the rotors are counter-rotating and the Airfix only tool the blades going one way, all this detail will have to be sanded off. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. We get some optional doors. The infamous glaze parts, oh joy. The transfers. Thankfully, I won't be needing these. So as you can see, a very basic kit and a very basic build. But I'm sure I will end up making a meal out of this. I can guarantee it. So let's make a start on that first issue. So not only do I have a two-piece canopy to glue together, with a seam being shown, but it also leaves a lot to be desired when it's attached to the body. The fun never stops with these builds. So I'll glue these parts together and using them to create a master. From that master I shall create a resin plug, and from that resin plug I shall create a new Vac-form canopy. Ha! We shall see. The side windows are next, and here I thin down the outside tabs because I want them to stick out of the side of the fuselage, just to give me something to sand back. Now the side door has a window in it, not supplied with this version, so I will have to produce a Vac-form piece from the kit's part. So a filler is mixed and applies to the gaps around the glazed parts. I usually apply a coat of Johnson's Clear to these parts to stop any fogging from this mix. The parts are sanded smooth, and for the side windows I've used sanding pads starting with a 4000 and ending with a 10,000 pad, and then all finished off with a coat of Johnson's Clear. Now after looking at the Bulldog canopy for some time, I think it could do with a few adjustments. I've sanded everything flush and I've ended up with 2 holes from the side windows. So I'm going to give this part some strength by adding some resin inside. This will also allow me to extend the rear. So I've ended up with a resin plug that I can work on and add to. And by the by, the glazed part is still stuck in all this resin here. So don't laugh, I've added some milliput here and there and we'll start to sand a shape to this lump. So after many years, well it feels like it, I'm ready to add the milliput side windows. So with these I've left enough material to sand them back once glued to the plug. So the plug or the master has had several layers of enamel paint added, just to see or spot for any imperfections. Now I could use this on the Vac-form machine as is, but I'm going to create a resin plug just to keep the master safe. So here goes on my new Dentist Vac-form machine. So after quite a few failed attempts, I've decided to create a new resin part, and that frill at the back I've sanded smooth. I'm hoping this will eliminate the side veins that I'm getting. It may be because the Vac-form machine is too small. I don't know, let me know. So after a few more attempts, it has improved, but I'm still wasting time and, more importantly, material. So what I've decided to do is cannibalise some of the Vac-form pieces. This isn't really the way to go, but there's no other option. I wish I'd have kept the kit's parts and just cleaned them up now. So picking a Vac-form piece with just one vein to deal with, I should cut this out and then transplant it with a veinless one. Nothing like creating a rod for your own back. So on to resin parts, and there will be some cleanup on the surface of these parts. As far as the mesh goes on the lower covers, I will have to come up with some sort of paint effect. Now there were several ways to add surface effects in Plasticity, but they all seem to distort when applied around a curved surface. Now I could have brought, and I did, bring an STL file into Onshape, and may have had some success with adding an effect there. So these resin parts are what I call the Mark II print versions sent to me. So let's see if they fit. I've been told they do, but this is the first time for me. So I'm just going to show you the 3D models I created in the Plasticity software. Now the software is easy to use and has that creative bent to it, but it does have its limitations. What it gives in one hand, it takes in the other. So I've started to add some basic interior detail, as the door is going to be left in the open position. Happy with that, I need to get back to that stupid canopy, and I need to figure out how on earth I'm going to attach this in the easiest way. So after a lot of head scratching, I'm going to cut here on one side, and on the other side I'm just going to cut out this sticky bit. I've just glued the two bits that I've cut off just to make it clearer to see what I've done. A tab has been added on one side, and I've sanded the other side, leaving me with this razor edge, which will hopefully give me a smooth transition to the canopy. A rudimentary cockpit has been built. I just need to find out how far this should come forward. Paint added, I'm itching to get these two sides glued together. Glued and all the lower slots filled in along with any other gaps. These parts are superfluous. The position of the kit legs I took as right when creating the 3D CAD models. This area around here needed a bit more finesse, I thought, and with a piece of plastic card this is easily accomplished. This is how I found out the position of the cockpit. All very technical, I can assure you. So with the cockpit glued in, I've then glued one side of the canopy, the one with the white tab first. Once this is dried, I shall glue the other side. This is all about control. Trying to glue both sides will be very risky. Everything dry on one side looks okay, but I'll have to blend in the other side. Going to add the lower resin covers next, then the tails. So the tails are fixed, and the nice thing about 3D modelling is that once one side is done, you just got to mirror the other side. That's great, but the kit fuselage halves were tooled by hand rather than machine, so the kit fairings on the kit are slightly different. What I'm trying to say is that one 3D part fits better than the other. Anyone remember the Nimrod MRA4? The legs I'll add at the very end as they are so fragile. Just looking at them, they will break. Just need to cut out the slots for them, where the kit slots were, and hopefully, if I've got my maths right, should fit in all the holes that were already there. So the lower resin covers are glued on, no issues, but I did forget about this upper fairing, which is made out of plastic card. So I fixed the tails and something wasn't right. Something was bugging me visually. They seemed too long. Even though I took them from drawings, never trust drawings. So after fanning about and trying to convince myself that it was just me, I bit the bullet and hacked them off. Very painful. I took about 2mm off each tail and pinned them back on. And I was glad I did it because they looked so much better from my point of view. I'm going to be ready to attach the side window, and I'm just going to use some Tamiya clear as glue to do that. I'm really beginning to hate this hobby, but I've only myself to blame. The rear housing, or engine housing, has a rear swoosh to it. Now I stupidly thought, looking at pictures, it was just a slack rudder. So after some surgery, quick surgery, some plastic card, I have made my own swoosh. I think it was added because of stability issues with the earlier helicopters. Let me know. I need to add a hook at some point, and I could create it in my new software, but then I'd have to have it sent away to get it 3D printed. So I may have to look around the spares box and see if I can find something. All the kit's air exhausts have been hacked off and sanded back, and I'll be replacing them with some plastic tubing. Remembering that the rear ones are straight, pointing straight out, and the front ones are bent backwards. So I've drawn the masks up from the canopy, and this information came from the Tamiya tape that I placed on the earlier resin master for size and position. So it won't be 100% accurate, but it's what will suit the Vac-form part that was created. So I just need to add the masks on the side fuselage and on the new created door. Blades, 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 blades. The first thing is to remove this raised part at the end, on all of them. One of the issues I'm having with the resin parts is that they keep curling up. Also, because the kit supplies the both rotors going the same way, I'm going to have issues with the blades on one of the hubs. So a bit of fudging is going to be required when attaching those blades at the root. In hindsight, I should have created some new blades and binned the kit parts. It would have been far easier. So with those blade assemblies drying, sat in the corner, I've added a Tamiya black to all the glazed areas. And I've added a light grey before adding a slightly off-white to the top surface here. The light grey just tones down the dark plastic, making the application of the white a lot easier. So another thing I've missed is that there's an underneath fairing, a V-shaped fairing where the hook is. Not the best time to add this. So I'm using a thin strip of plastic about 6mm in width and then cut into two pieces. One around 22mm in length and the other 40mm in length. A centre line is then marked on the strips along with a mark to let me know where to stop. So I'm slightly scoring down the centre line and then we'll score diagonally on either side on the second pencil mark. This strip is then carefully bent along the score lines into shape. The position of these two strips is marked using the features on the body as a guide, along with this centre line. So my first strip will start here, the gap for the hook, and then the second strip. There, just need to add the hook at some point. Next, I've masked off, ready for the aluminium effect. And I've decided just to add a touch of white to this Vallejo semi-matte aluminium. Mustn't forget to paint these as well. The white just kills that sparkle. I now need to give some attention on how to create a mesh effect on these two lower covers. So I've been messing around with these meshes, putting paint through them and seeing what kind of effect I get. And I've ended up liking this one. It's also very flexible, which is a plus. So all masked off and the mesh taped on, ready for the paint. Now the paint will be airbrushed as thick as feasible. So after several light coats, I've ended up with this. It'll do me. Just need to do the front face. Next, the markings, and the ones supplied, even if I could use them, are no good anyway. That blue cheat line is far too thick and the serial numbers are too bold. So I've sourced and scrounged and looked far and wide for markings near enough. It would have been great just to have one set, but I couldn't find anything online. These ones are no carrier film roundels, so these will need to be glued on. I shall be using the fin flashes on the 172 scale sheet and the roundels for the 144 scale sheet. The code letters from this sheet, but my first issue is that thin blue cheat line. Now I could have masked it, but because it's so thin, any slight discrepancy will stand out a mile. Plus I would hate to mask it. Horrible thought. I did try creating my own cheat line on white decal paper, but for some unknown reason I ended up with these white chipped edges. So I know this is a shame, but I'm going to try and cannibalise the sidebar markings from this Jetstream sheet by cutting them into thin strips. So the blue cut strip added along with the roundels and fin flashes. Now I've had to use some PVA glue mixed with water, a ratio of 1 part glue to 4 parts water, which seemed to work, remembering to wipe away any glue residue. Now I did order some Tamiya glue for these transfers, but it never arrived, so I don't know whether the Tamiya glue would have been any better. Next, the homemade transfers, and I think I may have missed out a circle which encloses the Reebok head. Let me know. So everything has been sealed in with a Tamiya satin varnish, and with that dry I can peel off the masks, and I'm hoping I don't have any issues hiding underneath those masks when I peel them off. So along with a few touch-ups around the masked areas, the side door has been added along with its rails and a few other details from Plasticard. Just need to add the scratch built probe at the front along the resin legs, and I'm hoping they'll take the weight. Then lastly, the rotors. So I've fitted the legs and I've dry fitted them on. I should have glued them in place really, but just in case I have any issues with them, I'll leave them dry for now. Now they did take a bit of bending, especially was it the rear one? I can't remember now. One of them, it was one of those where you bend it to a point and it's ready to break, but luckily it didn't. But they all fit in the holes and slots, which is great. Now I was going to use a pencil to add some panel lines here and there, but I've had enough of this build and I feel lucky I've got this far without throwing it in the bin. This has been a poor build and finish for me. All of my own doing, for all sorts of reasons, which is a shame really because the resin parts turned out good. Anywho, hope you've enjoyed the process, and whatever the next build is, hopefully not too long, I hope to see you then. So I want to thank you for your support on this channel, and I want to thank you for watching. See you later.